of all of the keys turned on, you will be spherical. That's right. That's why eventually, like when you go into Kama Sutra state, you turn into a sphere of light. And so does your partner if you're doing it with a partner. And that is how you are able to go. You turn into a tachyon. You become the tachyon field. All right. So basically what they're trying to explain, and they're just starting to explain this stuff, they finally showed us how we get down from these cycles into what we call matter and the stuff that matter is made out of. But around us is our whole body. If we had all our keys turned on, our body would be a sphere body, and we would be much less dense in the center. But when you have certain parts of the codes turned off that become the negative space around us, what is left of the codes that turn on are the body form that emerges out through the elementals. And these imprints are carried through the gene code. They're carried in conception, where that's how you get race lines that make babies that carry on the race lines and those kind of things. There are other types of procreation, more a part of Christic systems that don't involve the parts as we know them. They still involve the Kama Sutra hugely, but they involve reproduction through budding, where it doesn't take two. You can just grow one, right? You can just make another being, and with soul agreements with those who want to come in and be that being, and you kind of cut out all sorts of different things, like you don't have certain body parts. Enjoy them while you got them, right? Respectfully, of course, because there will be a time when you evolve past the state of such objectified polarity of gender orientation, and you don't have all sorts of things, like you don't have to eat. So think of all the things in your body you wouldn't need if you didn't have to eat in order to live. If all you had to do was breathe. Well, you need something that resembles lungs or gills or both, right? But you wouldn't so much if you didn't need to eat. Teeth would they kind of hold your face together and look a little nicer on the cheekbones, but they wouldn't be essential. You wouldn't need stomachs or intestines or anything connected to them. If you could do budding instead of having to go through all the strange experiences, it seems strange when you're coming from elsewhere, believe me, of having babies the way they're had here, you wouldn't need those parts either. If you knew how to make love fully, you wouldn't miss having those parts either. But it doesn't mean that having those parts is bad. It means while you got them, use them well and enjoy them. But don't be overly attached to them. I think there's a lot of girls that aren't, but it seems to be in this culture a guy thing, where I don't think all guys have that problem, but boys it pumped in the media, like, oh, hey, I'm macho man, hold me yours. You know what I mean? It's like, get for it. I'm so lucky because the people in my life aren't like that. But when you look at the cultural programming for males and females, and there's a lot of that macho guy thing where there's this huge identification with sexual body parts being a sign of self-worth and self-confidence completely. And there's a lot of women who have it, but it's not about that part because they don't have one. But it's about these parts, right? Or some of them, the behind parts, that kind of thing. There's a fixation on parts that's being pumped to us and fed to us through the media. And, it's on TV, even benign TV shows. We need to, realize that that's part of the mind control game that's being pumped to us here. That has nothing to do with what real sexual pleasure is about, what real making love is about, and even what really experiencing a joyous lust. Because lust isn't wrong. Lust is only wrong if it's turned into a negative lust, where it's used as a feeding tool, where you're letting your elementals and whatever that's pushing their buttons drag you around and control your life and take advantage of other people. Lust can be passion, which is innocent. A passion. There's a passion and ecstasy for ascension. Because when you go into ascension, as far as orgasms go, you cannot beat the kind that it feels like when you do orgasms. And a full orgasm means you turned into a sphere of light and you went home to Source and you touched the heart of God. And then came back to tell about it. That is the greatest orgasm you'll ever have. And the nice thing is, once you get it going, you can have it over and over and over again. And you can bring people with you, and you can do all sorts of neat things with or without parts that, So there's a lot of freedom in all of that. Anyway, next one. I think it's time to do the striptease again here. This is just to finish up that line of those diagrams that we saw with the circles that have the 12, clock lines or the key lines, the Kama Sutra lines, right? Those became, once flashpoint happened, they came back out. Those same crystals and codes became the ruche configurations, where you have 3 ruches, and you can find that in your body, both in your seed atom up here and in your Shadi seed atom down in your private parts. What we're going to be doing tonight with one of the activations is linking those two, so the stronger currents of the Shadi from the Idan levels can come up and send the keys up to begin clearing the distorted Metatronic keys and overriding them, because the threshold activations that are taking place now in the grids are meant to interface with the Adonic level of the of our outer seed atom, and that would begin the harness on the outer domain body. So this is, we're going through the process of using the Idan level to begin clearing the Rosetta pattern of the outer level through the Idan, through the Azure. Now this is going to, at some point, when you see those with the 12 lines, they become the ones that look like a ruche, and they become what will be these. These will be the atomic charts at some point. We will list the families. These are the first level of the elemental commands that we're doing. These are not the elementals yet. They're the elementi. And there are 4 groups of elementi and 1 group of auroras. And they basically represent the 5 density groups. Like I have, the 5 densities going up from density 1, density 2, density 3, density 4, density 5. And they each have a different assignment or force that they govern, and one is the ethers, and that would be like the core silicas, actually, salakas, that have to do with the first phasing levels. They would correspond more to the core of those circular diagrams. Then you would have the Urta command, or the Earth command, or Eartha command, the solids. Then you'd have the Wataor command, or the Lakawada, the liquids, the water commands. Now, we're going to, at some point, and I think they're going to do this in FOL, okay, they're going to assign, for anyone who wants to participate, they're going to allow you to begin the process of feeling out what command you might want to be a part of. All right, and these are kind of like the junior commands in training, right, where we learn how to do these and make our links with those. Then we will begin working with these. And we will each find a resonance where we feel most comfortable, and we'll be given a lot more information on who they are, what their symbols are. Each one of these, there's going to be a point where all of the numbers and words are taken off this diagram, and it becomes a symbol code. Because every one of these will have a specific symbol that is the symbol for that element that goes with it, or for that family line that goes with it. And it is going to be a full spectrum key chart at some point. We're also going to be able to plug it into what the atomic mesh chart is now that our science is using as it identifies mutated, and some of them not mutated fully, atomic structure. So this is just the beginning of understanding the keys. There's a lot more to come, but they did say probably, yeah, okay. In FOL, I was listening, trying to say, they're kind of going, well, we could do it tonight. And you can do it tonight. We're doing 5 million things tonight. Right? He said, all right. He said, we'll see. All right. They're actually kind of not sure if they're going to wait till FOL to do it, or if they're going to tack it into one of the exercises we do tonight, as far as feeling out a resonance with one of the first of the 5 commands. And it's easy. You can, if you realize what they connect with, the more technical details, fine. But you can just think of it, do I feel more like ether, more like earth / eartha, right? Like, Christic earth, let's put it that way. or water, or air, or fire. Just try to feel out. And one isn't necessarily better than the other. Don't think, oh, it's higher, it's better, so I'm going to, everybody's going to be in fire. You know what I mean? We need to balance keys. If you feel a resonance think of your relationship to the planet and to being outside. What do you like most? What comforts you most? Does the sitting on the ground and watching the four-leggeds run around, is that the thing that moves you most? Or do you like to stand in the fierce wind and feel it rip through you and kind of go, I like to feel that wind, right? Now, that might just be air, right? If you just love swimming or being in the water, on the water, around the water, near the water, right? Might just be water command. See, you will have a natural orientation already. It will be carried in your encryption. We all have come through as part of these families. It's not as if, we're this bunch of refugees that some nice family on Earth is taking in, right? We are part of these families to begin with. So we each do carry a primary resonance with one of, first of all, these 5. And then later we will see which ones of the main commands that we carry a primary, secondary, and tertiary resonance with, which means we actually have the ability, once we open our main command, we can do them in groups of 3 with the DNA structure of the bodies that we have. So it's a beginning process. And this is where you start to be able to really know your atoms and realize that when you see your skin and you touch it, or when those little hairs stand up for whatever reason, that it is your Kali crystals that are standing up, that are making that happen. They're sensitizing. And if you realize that, you realize there's an interaction taking place that's actually starting on the inside. It's starting in the blood, and then moving into the bone, and then moving up into the skin. You can also use the skin to send a message back to the bone and to the blood. So all of these elemental commands will plug us into our bodies much, much more than we ever have been, but in a way where we can start healing the consciousness that is there and getting it to cooperate with us, which means we'll be able to start helping ourselves heal conditions better. It won't be overnight like, okay, I'm elemental command now and I order you to be healthy. You know what I mean? I order you to grow back that finger I lost 10 years ago. Well, it's not going to work that fast. Ideally, at some place, all you'd have to think it. When everything was working fully, you would simply have to think it, and it would heal. And we can go back into that state, but it's not going to happen overnight. We have to start with the Kundalini awakenings and move through the cycles that are inherent to the natural starburn cycle with the cycle that we started in February. All right, next one, please. I think I'm going to sit down for 2 seconds. Still talk, but sit. Oh. Oh, right. Okay, good thing to point out. As I was just pointing out that we should mention that when we do that exercise and you think about the elements, and the 5 commands, you don't allow astrological influences to move you. If you've been into astrology or whatever, astrology is built on the ecliptic. It is built on the precession of the equinoxes, all of which are configurations caused by the beast and the sextant shield of the 666 pattern. All right? So whatever you learned about astrology, keep it so you think might be useful some other place, but don't say, oh, because I'm a Pisces, that means I'm a water. Right? Completely just get rid of that stuff, because that stuff is meant to plug you in to other commands, elemental connections that you weren't meant to be plugged into in the first place. They do affect your birth imprint. They encode the Metatronic crystals as far as when you were born, where you're born, all of that, those kind of things. But the entire science of astrology is about that. It is about tracking the influence of the sextant and the precession of the equinoxes and all of that, and how that has formed your personality and affected your personality. And it has. That is part of the programming that is connected to the victim-victimizer programming of the teliospheres. That will be the programming we're clearing and healing. So we will be able to override the astrological imprints that do not suit us. And ones that do suit us, consider it a happy coincidence. All right? You had it anyway. So just so we don't necessarily don't think about astrology when you're trying to figure out what sign you might feel, what of the elements you might feel most comfortable with. Just think of them themselves, how they live in nature, be it water or air or earth or fire or ether. That's an interesting one. What might that feel like? One clue. Do you like snow? Some people do, some people don't. However, something like snow or ice, or looking at pictures of, say, the South Pole or North Pole and the amazing landscapes of ice and the amazing types of things and beings that can live, say, deep under the ocean in ice water. There's a whole world that most people, particularly warm-blooded ones, don't tune into, that has to do with cold spaces, and there can be much warmth held in coldness. It is from the coldness that the warmth emerges. So the ethers, there's a lot of clues to ethers, and there's some hot ethers too, but one of the clues is an affiliation for snow or liking to be outside in the winter and like enjoying winter sports, those kind of things. That would be one little clue that you have some of the ether imprint in you. Another thing would be, there's almost like the negative imprint of the ether, would be if you have a problem keeping warm, where if you feel cold too often, or you find yourself like wearing 3 sweaters when everybody else is like wearing a t-shirt, that kind of thing. Hello. Yeah. Now I have that in me, but I'm not ether. I know what my command is. They told me what my command was. Didn't surprise me though. I happen to be air. Which is cool. Okay, but I thought I was a flame holder. You are. You're an air flame holder. Okay. Yeah, as is fire. So anyway, they're the encryptions that we carry. Just try to think about it and feel out a little bit in case they throw it in at the end of the exercises. There might be a little something they throw in that has to do with that, and it will help to have in mind when you think you feel best with. And try to think of, if you do have a feeling, like if you remember a time in the ocean or a time on the beach or a time on the earth or a time in the wind, you felt the freest, that felt good, right? Just try to recall that moment, because that was when you actually connected, a space-time moment when you were connecting with the elementals of the planet of Earth, but in a good way, in a way that was expansive as opposed to detrimental. And if they go into that bit at the end that I don't know what it might be, but it might be there, try to bring that moment back to mind, why you decided that, I think I have a feeling for that command. You could actually hold 2 in your mind if you want to, if you can't decide between 2. And whatever it is that's going to run through through that imprint will connect to the one that's the strongest. Okay, so now we'll go on to this. This is just to recap on the starborn cycle. Then, just to show the stages of expansion in the starborn cycle. That brings you from the Taran, the first light seed, up to the Unisai, and the flame cycle that creates the Rashala inner flame and the Rashala outer flame. Now, there are 4 sets of these that bring us out to outer creation. So we are on the first now. We are 1. We had the 0 axis, then we have birth of the Taran, birth of the Dyad, birth of the Mayad, birth of the Monad, birth of the Amaraya. And here is what is happening tonight and this morning. I think this is what we're going to be on the beach for. I think this is that's going to come through while we're on the beach. And that's why they want us by the sand and the water and the wind. The wind has something to do with it. Great. Does that mean we're going to freeze to death because it's going to be really windy? Uh-oh. I don't think so, though. You can have gentle wind. But this is what is rebirthing now on our first cycle of 4. All right? We are going to also have an accelerated activation that will allow us to hold the integrity of that so it can't get spun around by the sextant threshold activation. Next one, please. Okay, that's just to remind you what it looks like when we talk about the Rosetta. The Rosetta is when you put all of those, one set of those 6 tachyon cycles plus their Adashai cycle and their Adashi cycle together, it creates what is called the Rosetta. And there are basically 9 layers to the Rosetta. And this is the cell configuration. Each one of those has partakai in it. Each one of those has sets of keys and crystals in it. But the Rosetta code is this code. This one is the one shown for the inner Unisai seed atom. But they all have the same configuration coming outward. So we can use the same diagrams to represent the, the other 4 cycles, because they do the same things. Next one, please. Uh-oh, here it goes. I can always tell if something's incoming because of back spasms right across the back of the 4th chakra, astral chakra. Years passed? Maybe you got it earlier. Obviously, because I'm just starting to get it. This is just to remind you that what we're confronting right now is a situation of activation of the Metatronic spiral, or the Fibonacci spiral, that is coming through the planetary Taran light seed that's at the center of the planetary Earth seed atom. Earth seed atom should have a Taran at its center. It did have a Taran at its center at one point, but at this point that Taran has been pulled into reversal and contraction and is in this configuration upside down, can no longer phase. That runs this particular set of energy currents that come out of the center, out of the seed atom, and first thing they do is spiral around and compact the seed atom into one condensed unit, or the Taran light seed into one condensed unit in the center of the planet. The Earth is going through that at this point. And then it begins to run. The spiral begins to run. It is the 3-sided spiral. The one that has 6 on it was actually an attempt. This was one of the only star crop circle that the beloveds ever claimed was theirs. And they made that happen in order to try to grab a hold of this when they first started the first level activations with all the crop circle activity over in England. And they attempted to catch it so they could turn it back around and stop this activation, but the activation wasn't strong enough on the one that was meant to harness it. So we've got the this one still running, and that one is going into its full compaction phase, where it'll take those and pull them into one. And when that happens, it consolidates current and makes it stronger. It's also the same point in time where this spiral, which is the spiral that will emerge out of this Taran, and out of the Metatronic Taran, and this natural crystal spiral, they will interface at this axis 6 point. So it is where they interface that what we are facing tonight and moving into tomorrow, and progressively between now and the FOL period of January of 2007, we will be moving into the space where that spiral coming from that, using this at the core, is trying to catch our spiral, pick up on it here at axis 6. It'll ride it through and strengthen the bond to it, and then right here, and they did this once before on the Yuga cycles, the big Yuga cycles, and it was called historically the fall of Brunaway. That's how they did it. Right here, right before you get to 7 axis, which would be birth of the Edon, right? It whacks the spiral with a burst Metatronic keys, and it temporarily cuts the spiral. And normally, if the spiral broke for a bit, it would reconnect with itself, just like an energy line that would find its tracer again. But it whacks it so it breaks, and then it harnesses it, and then pulls it back around in the harness and drags it back this way. And once that happens, they got you. Because it takes all of your keys that you were creating and all of your crystals, and it takes every one of them all in one swoop and pulls them into reversal and into the Metatronic code. And this is what is beginning now. The first whack in our first as we get toward finishing our first Starborn cycle out of 4 is going to take place during the FOL period, and that's why there's going to be certain things done with the the group there. It's going to be a very safe space to be, let's put it that way, because the beloveds are going to make sure that this getting harnessed does not happen. All right, if it did, they would do the 3-day notice and they would pull out whoever could get out, because they would lose everybody otherwise. So the chances are it will go all right, but what it's going to feel like or look like, we don't know. We'll know more by the FOL workshop. And the fact that there is an FOL workshop, it will make it, the people that do show up there are actually helping the people that don't, because it will strengthen the indigo shield enough. I believe they're bringing in a pillar, as far as like a stabilizing pillar, to just fortify whatever frequencies we're able to generate. We'll probably do another level of the Kama Sutra activations, but a more intense one. And it will create a pillar that will allow the indigo shield to hold, like, you know, where that location is, and that location just so happens to be in the Arc 7 vicinity, very close to Arc 7, and where the Shalon shield of that spanner gate is. So we will be right there to activate the bone or stone. Interesting. We're going to be activating stone in Phoenix. But it will create a protection field for the people who can't come, or the indigos that are elsewhere and don't even know we exist, you know, on this planet. So there is a big activation coming in to counteract what the threshold is doing. If you've noticed in the last, it's actually been about 3 months, since about July, when it was pretty much definitely fall of the Tothian shield. There's been these, like, it's almost like piranhas of the universe have been coming out and like biting your ankles astrally. Just little harassments, little pushing at you here, pushing at you there from strange directions. People that you thought were fine, people that were your friends once, all of a sudden acting weird towards you, or a neighborhood that felt good once, or felt at least benign, all of a sudden just feels hostile even though nobody's done anything. I mean, there's weird things happening. Some are more like you'll find people being more aggressive to you while you're driving on the road. All sorts of stuff like this. This is all coming since the fall of the Tothian shield, because they're picking at us. They're picking at the indigo shield, just harassing it, trying to make us tired, trying to drain us, try to get so the point when we hit that first interface, we'll be so tired, drained, exhausted, and weak that we won't be able to hold enough of the Kundalini currents through the Kama Sutra to be able to hold the shield together. What the Red Dragon groups, who are the aggressors in this victim-victimizer game that we're stuck in the middle of down here, what they want to do is shatter the shield enough, which means not necessarily vaporize any of us, they just want to break it up so we can't hold the frequencies that will hold the rainbow thread crystal spiral open, because our holding it open so our guys can get out and anything Christian can get out also allows for crossback, which is for the fallen angelic groups such as the Buddhara, the Jehovah Anunnaki groups, the Archangel Michael groups, the Indrami Necromaton, everything that came, the Wisadeks, everything that came out of the Wisadek black hole set. They're the enemies of the Wisadraks and those races that are affiliated with those. So we basically have two agendas with lots of players, but actually the players on the field that we're going to see on this planet and elsewhere have to do with the division between the red dragons, which are Wisadraks, Thetans, some of the Equerry that actually did fully fall, not the ones that came in to try to help the problem, and Thetans, and now the Tothians, and a group called the Fortentia. They're known as the Yubai races, and they have to do with the time rip that goes through the Iyumbi flame in our Vecca system. They're known as the Incubi and the Succubi. All right, in history, they've come down in history since Atlantis, since the he and she devils, because they're ones that tend to use seduction and sexual energy to try to suck energy and get control out of other people until they suck their soul dry, as they say, and then the body dies. Right? So these races are on the Red Dragon team, and the green races have anything basically connected to Anu type races, except for Tothians that just got hijacked by the Thetans, so are now being used to serve the red agenda. All right? So we are stuck in the middle of this wacky agenda. The green dragons want to go home to their own hole. The red dragons fully control threshold at this point. They are going to pull everything they can into their black hole. The green dragons have been fighting with these guys, all their different groups fighting with each other at different times. The last thing they want to do is go down the red dragon's black hole. And in fact, the Buddhara will destroy the whole system, which is not a good idea because we're stuck in the middle of this, remember that, right? We're still here. They will destroy the whole system before they allow themselves to be pulled down into the Wisadrak black hole. So deep is the hatred between the Buddhara and the Wisadraks. So there's been something called a balance order that was petitioned by the Buddhara, of all people, on behalf of the Anu, because the Anu broke contracts with us during the Treaty of Altair, so we're therefore not, because there's a certain time thing, like if you tell us you're going to do something once and you don't, you have to wait X amount of centuries before you can try again and see if you're good for your word this time, right? So the Anu couldn't directly ask our councils anymore for direct intervention because when they asked the last time, they made agreements and they broke them, and many indigos were harmed because of that. So their time lapse, as far as now, that was not nice. There's a protocol that they couldn't ask. They could not be heard in council because of breaking those agreements. However, the Buddhara took on their case because the Buddhara have all their wormholes linked through the Wisadek side. So the Buddhara petitioned on behalf of the Anu races from the Wisadek side for what is called a balance order. A balance order in the high Christian councils, and it's only in the highest and deepest ones that will give these. If there is a drama in the outer domains between groups that is going to get so bad and so bloody, and the odds are so stacked against one group, and the other just won't stop, they're just going for aggression just because they can. At this point, the Green Dragons has started the activation of the beast, and the Red Dragons got control of it. They have full control of it now, and they are planning to use it to completely annihilate the Green Dragon races. This is going to turn into a mess on this planet when you look at the faces of doctrine that each of those groups are actually running under. You have your Green Dragons are primarily, and there's little bits of the other in each other, but primarily the Green Dragon base here involves the Christian and the Jewish doctrines, and I won't say races, I'd say doctrines, all right? And the people in the Muslim doctrines are being moved by the Red Dragons, which means they don't look like they're the aggressors. But you'll see something in a minute that has to do with the victim-victimizer game and a series of programs that are about conquering. There's a program that was put into the planetary grids and is run on the sextant clock. And we'll begin to see this pattern that it pops up in our own lives, just in dramas we get ourselves into without even meaning to. And just like the people on mass levels are not meaning to get themselves into a drama, they've already engaged it. And we'll see what that means. Now, the currents that we are beginning to run will still allow us to break free of the hold of the Metatronic interface, and it will allow us to begin clearing that VV program in ourselves. So we may watch it go down around us, especially if we have to stay here till 2047. Guaranteed we're going to see something be flying in the skies, and it's probably not going to be spaceships first anyway. But it will help us to be able to stay neutral so we don't get engaged in that game that is going to be run on the sextant clock. Next one, please. Let's speed this up a little bit. Oh, honey. Just really quick, I just want to go through to remind the connection. So that threshold grid, if we remember, is connected to this whole mess in the planetary body that creates the unnatural ecliptic plane, it creates the unnatural poison apple magnetic fields, it creates the unnatural daisy of death configuration and the bulge at the poles. All that's all connected. That's the environmental problem we have, and our galaxy has it too, and all the way up to density 4 has it in our universal vacuum at this point. That's why it's considered a falling system. Next one. That's what it looks up close up. It looks like close up as far as our big horns. Our horns and trumpets, and I do believe there's probably 7 of them, or maybe there are 10. Whatever, it's funny because it's encoded in the Bible when they talk about the beast with the horns, right? So anyway, that is what we're dealing with, what we're moving our fields to overcome. That again are the Van Allen, the core structure that creates the Van Allen radiation belts that are part of the electromagnetic harness, and the other part is what they call the magnetosphere around the planet that protects us from the solar wind. Well, yeah, if you put our axis back up straight and let the solar wind hit us, we'd be a living planet again because our seed atom would have been able to phase when it got those solar currents circulating through it. So, just because it appears in nature does not mean it is natural. Just so you know, don't be fooled by that line. Yes, next one. Uh-oh. Oh, what are those? Yeah, this is a really quick, scribble it down, but got to get it. Aha, that's what it's supposed to look like, right? This is one of those in progress. But this will, at some point, this will be much cleaner. This, I got to sit down again. I'm starting to get the rushes up and down the spine of the Kundalini, and sometimes they feel like thick rods of energy, almost like metal where you can't move, and the whole back kind of spasms. And then they shift, and they go, right? So if I'm up and down, just ignore me and just listen. Yeah. All right. Just close your eyes and listen. No, you can't see the graphs then. Okay. Now, what this mess of lines sticking out all over is, if we, and what I will do eventually is have a color one of these where you can see which lines go with the natural Christ clock that is the 6 tachyon cycles plus the Adashai and the Adashi, right? Now, these darker lines were meant to highlight the axis of the sextant clock distortion. They are put over this circle. Now, there's the vertical line. That belongs to our natural Christic tachyon cycle, right? And this is a shield clock that runs at the core of the planet and also in the core of our bodies. This was the natural horizontal for, yeah, getting late early. This is the horizontal. And these coming in this way at 45 degrees to these, they are the natural 8 lines that go with our sextant clock, or not our sextant, our cosmic clock. I'm getting tired, so I kind of stumble over my words a little bit. Here would be the 0 axis, and that would be the Cetus cycle. And then this would be where the Taran was born, and then the Tachyon 1 cycle. And then that would be axis 2, where the Dyad is born, and the Tachyon 2 cycle. And then that would be where the Myad was born, and the Tachyon 3 cycle, the Myad cycle. This would be where Tachyon cycle 4, Monad was born, number 4. And this would be the number 4 Tachyon cycle. This would be where the Amore hub cell, 48, is born. And then this would be the T5 cycle. That's what we just finished. And this is where we are now, axis 6 at the T6 cycle start, right? The T6, Tachyon cycle 6, runs from here to axis 7, from 6 to 7. There's also what's called a Hetharo and Hethalon point in there, which is an acceleration point, electrical and magnetic peak in there. And then we hit what is called, when we hit axis 7, called the Adashai point. Now, there's different types of Adashais, and I haven't even gotten into which is where and how many million years and how many days, because there are huge time scales that run on these from the microcosm to the macrocosm. In the Voyagers books, originally, they talked about the Dor Adashai. All right? So that was one type of Adashai. They're just referring to it now as the Adashai cycle. And the Adashai cycle starts at axis 7 with the birth of the Edon, and it goes through to axis 0, 8, back to the 0 point. So the whole Adashai cycle is from 7 to 8. Now at that point, you hit the Adashi point. Now you have Adashai and then Adashi, right? The Adashi point is where we begin to spin down back into core, and then start a really rapid cycle of expansion back out this way, counterclockwise, to pick up the Adore keys. That's where we flip into Adore and pick up the Adore keys. And once we finish the Adashi cycle, we come back counterclockwise to the 0 point again. And it is at that point that we go into the full flame and go into flash point, and not just on one tachyon cycle, but on a full yuga cycle, tachyon cycle. And that's where we get to make the shift into flame activation. Now, there are technically 4 layers of that to a full ascension, all right, or to a full being able to pop into the Edon. You'll get your core into Edon through the first level. You'll get your middle level of your structure on the second level. You'll get your inner on the second level. You get your third level of self in on the third cycle, and then your fourth cycle, you'll get the outside matter, so you got your whole self in. You need to, in order to get a 3-dimensional body in, you have to have the 4 cycles to be able to make the leap, and that's the point where we can actually go into Edon or the next cycle or make a massive time leap. That is where our crystal spiral will take us through into Starfire. But there are several layers of these. We have small clocks running right now and larger ones running. The small one for us started in January of 2006. when the initial activations of the Taran light seed began, before it fully activated and began to pulse, they knew it was going to go at this point. And I believe that began in, I don't know if there was a, yeah, it was January of FOL of '06, all right, the last FOL. And they weren't sure if it was going to work, so they didn't talk too much about it until we got to Tenerife. Then they just let it rip. That's when we learned about tachyons and all sorts of other things. The jewels, the key is that there was so much on that itinerary. It's going to, oh my God, when they brought it through. Right? Once in a while, we actually have, an itinerary of what we're going to learn in class. That's a luxury, for me anyway. So anyway, we'll go through these cycles. This one started in January of the FOL of '06. This was Tenerife, February '06. That was birth of the Tarn. This was birth of the Dyad, Easter '06, Phoenix. This was birth of the Monad. When was that? That was Easter. That was Shasta. That was Shasta, May '06. This one was birth of, see, I should have these labeled. When I'm tired, I can then just read it instead of trying to remember what it is. This one was birth of the Monad, and that one was Denver. And that's when we also activated the monadic level of the Umshadi seed atom to begin, so we could interface them and begin the process of linking the Edonic seed atom with the outer in order to clear the outer, the distortion in the outer. All right, this was the birth of the Amorea hub cell. And so this was the Sacred Sex Workshop 1. This was Sacred Sex Workshop 2 again in Phoenix. That one was, right? Yeah, in August. And this one over here is this one, this workshop. This is a fast cycle, if you notice. We're going, if we're going to be done by when? We're going to have October, this one. This point is occurring FOL of '07. So this is what we're preparing for next. And it is here that we run into problems. All right. Once we make it through here, which we will, then we're going into the, so this is where we enter the Adashai cycle. Yeah, the Adashai cycle from 7 to 8. And that goes between FOL in January to Easter '07. And again, I believe that's in Phoenix. We're doing it in Phoenix. And then we go through the Adashi cycle, going in through and coming up all the way through up to there, coming through up to here and back here. And I believe this ends up, we're back to Easter and Phoenix. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think they're going to put another something in there because Peru is where we do the shift and shift over to here, where we complete the flame activation and then go through the birth of the Unisai experience. And that's where the Peru trip is coming in. And that's when we're going to activate something called the gyrodome. And we'll learn more about what that is. Well, they've said it's the Christ's answer to, to the beast, or the Christ's answer probably more comparatively to the gravitron. It's like a good one. That does something. It does something to strengthen the crystal spiral that will allow us to be able to not be drawn in to this mess. Now, the mess I'm going to show you is that was our natural cycle of, now that we've got our seed atoms activated, or our light seeds activated, it's ticking now, and they're making keys, and they're creating crystals, and all of that is in progress. And you can't stop it, but you can mess it up. And this beast machine that you saw various different pieces of, as far as the vortices and all the different things and the distortions and the Merkaba fields and the Cathara grids, all that. That's all connected to this artificial shield clock that is meant to harness keys or to suck up those crystals like a vacuum cleaner and take the crystals and the matter structures that are attached to them and draw them into a black hole as a means of harnessing quantums, large quantums, sometimes whole solar systems, sometimes whole universes like this one, where you harness it through these artificially generated electromagnetic fields, and you can literally keep somewhat of the structural integrity of a system intact while dragging it into full reversal, into black hole fall, so you can feed your black hole. Because eventually, if you don't feed black holes, they go through a natural cycle of burning out their seed atom and then imploding and exploding, and when they explode, they will ride back on the next starfire cycle, the next natural starfire cycle of a living universe, because there is a mercy in the way the physics of the cosmos is set up, where you're never lost forever. Even if you go back as space dust, at least you get back, because you know it's just a different experience of going back. But anyway, what we're facing now is an interface directly with the activation of the sextant clock. The sextant clock works in an interesting way. This is just the beginning of it, but it runs, and just like we have smaller cycles, like this one is about a year, right? And then there's going to be 4 more of those on this scale. These are part of much bigger ones where you can actually trace the entire drama in this matrix, this 15-dimensional matrix, back to like 250 billion years. I hope they're not going to expect me to do that, but we can take it back, and at some point we're going to try to take it back through the yuga cycles, through the yuegos and the yugas and whatever that comes after that I can't remember this hour in the morning. We're going to plug those in, the cosmic clock cycles, into the progression of the keys, because that's what the cosmic clock cycles are. And we'll be able to see different times, like where did the fall of Brennaway happen? I know that happened in, I think it might have been the 4th yuga again. It happened, it must have been, because this is how they created it. The fall of Brennaway was really bad, 208,216 BC. It was, they almost blew the planet up, actually, here. And it created huge mutations. That story is covered a bit in the Voyager's book. But that happened in that particular yuga. It happened, where were we? Right here. Right before the Adashai point. And that is the point where one of these completes, one of these Metatronic ones completes. Now the Metatronic sextant clock that runs through all those nasty things and runs through that upside-down harnessed tarn, it starts out with its axis, its top axis here. Here is where it latches on to the natural light seed structure. Axis 2. So it doesn't latch on axis 1. It latches its axis, its 0-point axis, onto our axis 2. All right? So that means its staff runs this way, or its vertical line runs this way from 2 to 6. And that's right when we're entering our birth of the Adon. Its rod is, where is it? Not quite horizontal. Let me see, where am I? Yeah, that is its staff. Yeah, I don't have all my, they're not exactly at the right angles. They're supposed to be at the 60-degree bit increments of a hexagonal crystal. But anyway, let's see here. The staff, they don't actually have a staff line. It attaches to one of our phase lines, or key lines, or what do they call them? Kamasutra lines. All right, so in the shields, what we call our fire lines, our crystal fire lines, they are the Kamasutra lines that allow for the coming together of those 3 sets of crystals and allow for tachyon formation. Okay, so all of these are that. But it interfaces its axis with us on this axis of our axis 2. And it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines to its clock structure, instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those 8 lines in our cosmic clock structure give us 6 tachyon cycles, plus an acceleration key accumulation cycle, plus a rebirth, pick up the keys from the other side, and full rebirth cycle. They don't have one of those because it's a dead system, and all it does is meant to feed off living systems. Now, how it feeds is, the cycle is known as the 666 cycle. All right? There are 3 6 cycles of escalation of the VV game and Metatronic sextant harness activation. So it activates through a process of 6 cycles, where I'm going to need both of these up, honey, just so I can, please, thank you. On the first set, now, you have the first 6 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 runs of the 9 stages 1 through 9 of the VV game. That will run 6 times, right? In that 6 times period, all right, it will start at axis 2, where it picks up and sucks on, sticks itself on like a sucker onto our axis, but at the core, right, on our axis 2. And then the sextant cycle will run this way, which means it'll come this way, right, past stage 6, right up to where 7 is. Not quite at 7, that spot right before you hit the Adashai point. Right? At that point, it will then simply, the clock itself reverses but doesn't do anything to ours yet. And it reverses and comes back to axis 2. So it's literally, its pole is going, this is picking up momentum. Now during that first cycle, what it does is it picks up enough keys from sucking key energy off of the core of the living system. It goes through during the last of the 9 stages. This is where you get the last of these. Each one of these 9 stages, each one of these six stages of 6 phases of 9 stages, let's call them, all right, will have keys stolen that allow for an expansion of, starting with 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Fibonacci. Okay? Now, when it gets to 8, which occurs at cycle 6, or stage 6, in the last, it occurs, it's a smaller cycle of this, occurs actually at each one of these, and at stage 6, it reaches the 8 accumulation point. At that point, it reverses spin and comes back up, back to axis 2. And that begins, so you'd have stage 6 would hit the 8. Stage 7 is when it does its turnaround. And then stage 8 is this cycle where it rapidly reverses pole back to where it had been. Then it starts its next cycle. Now this is a positive 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8 expansion. The next of the 6 cycles is the opposite. It's a negative 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8 expansion. So Fibonacci is still up to 8 only on these 2 6 cycles, right? So it got back to here on this cycle. You know, it started out here, turned around, and then came back. Then it starts here this time, goes counterclockwise, comes around counterclockwise, hits the 6 point, and comes back around, and it goes back up that way. And that completes another set of 6 9-stage cycles. And then the last one is the dangerous one. Okay? And the last one, it starts off where it left off, which was up here. All right? It continues this way. Now, this is where we're at. It comes in this way. Now, remember, there'd be a smaller one of these for each of these cycles. And at the 6th point is where it does its final get ready to pull. The most dangerous cycle, or the completion of this cycle, is when you have, of this 6th cycle, you enter the 6th stage of the VV game in the 6th cycle. That's when it interfaces with our axis 6 again. And this time it has enough momentum because of all the keys it stole with its other flipping back and forward, sucking energy off our living keys in the meantime. So it comes out this way, starts here, hits the 6th axis, and gets up to just about 7 and then turns around again. And this is occurring as our crystal spiral is coming out this way. So when our crystal spiral is coming out here, trying to make its way through its next tachyon cycle so it can hit its Adashai point so we can go in through the time leap into ascension, what this little nasty thing does is its pole comes down, so it shifts pole. Its pole lines up directly with our axis 6 pole, with our Adon, Divine Blueprint, and then it rides it and progressively bonds it, or binds to it, until it gets to about here, and then it goes. There's a burst of energy that comes through from this, because as this is doing this last cycle, here is where it went from 1 through 8 there, and then it had to go 1 through 8 reverse, where it's actually picking up the bass tone code. So it's picking up the overtone codes, picking up the bass tone codes. Now it can make its next expansion into overtone codes, where it goes from what it had before expansion, and this is also expansion, also has with it a fire letter content or a key content that would give it X amount of quantum. So it can make a quantum leap here when it goes from cycle 2 to 6 cycle 2 to 6 cycle 3, where it goes from 8. And remember, if anybody doesn't know the Fibonacci thing, if you look at it, if you take 8, they got the 8 is found by going 3 plus 5 equals 8. If you go 1 plus 2 equals 3, 1 plus 1 equals 2. It eats the one before it, kind of thing. All right? It doesn't even have a relationship with its center. It doesn't start, technically, it really doesn't start at 0. Its 0 point is where it sucks its energy fields. The apparatus of the beast sucks its energy fields into our axis 2 and begins sucking energy off of our dyad at that point. All right, so what happens here when we get to the 6th stage of the 6th cycle? That is when the 6th axis aligns, and that's what we are at now. We are at the fulfillment point of the 666, because we had one 6th cycle that has already completed. We have another 6th cycle. I don't have all of their dates plugged in yet, but it might start with the activation of the beast. I'm not sure. I have to get those technicals down. But we have one 6th cycle of the sextant complete, another 6th cycle of the sextant complete, expansions to 8. Then through this expansion of the 6th cycle, it went from 13 to 21 to 34 to 55 to 89, and when it hits the 6th cycle and birth of the 8 on, it is at 144. All right? That is a point where it can hit harmonic resonance with the natural crystal keys. And that is at the point where it can pull enough energy from the keys to actually use the keys, reverse them fast, and use them themselves to break the crystal spiral, and then pull them into reversal. And that's what our little friends are planning for all of us. And the indigo shield. This is what Earth shield is going through anyway, and we can't stop that at this point. But they're trying to pull the indigo shield into that as well, and that we will stop, because that is just not going to be allowed. We've all worked too hard for too many eons to have it end that way. So we are here now. That means we're going through this motion. It's going to hit here. This is when we come up to the FOL point, and that burst of energy happens here. And that burst of energy is meant to do this down here in the corner. Once it comes up to that point, the blast of energy used in the amplification factor that's available harmonically because of the 144 interface will blast it there. It'll actually break temporarily the spiral, but then drag it in and bend it in to the different configuration of the Fibonacci spiral, and then pull it back and reverse it and bring it all the way back up to here, and drag our energy spiral down into the core of the reversed Taran. And at that point, all of our keys, instead of collecting and downloading into the Adore system, which is the normal process of ascending into, finishing ascension cycle, they will instead be harnessed, and the whole bunch of them will be drawn in and loaded into the core of whatever planet is being used as the Metatronic catalyst, which Earth has been used as. So we are going to stop this, and it's the Kundalini activations of the Kama Sutra that we will begin tonight. That will begin the process. Now we are still on the activation of the first level of 4. We're on Tachyon cycle 6 in the first level of 4 of these natural clocks, and that means it's a core level activation in our outer domain bodies. It's a core level activation. It's also a core level activation that we'll connect with. We'll be able to pull some energies from literally from the core, through the hubs, through the middle Edon, and outward. And that's where we're going to get the extra frequency blast and the extra keys. We're actually going to get a core pulse come through, and it's enabled because of our positioning in the cycles. There's certain harmonic resonance. There's the open conduits temporarily. What it will do is give us enough energy to resist this. To resist, there's a bend that happens during that, from when the tachyon cycle 6 is emerging, between axis 6 and axis 7. Instead of the spiral, the natural crystal spiral, taking its normal bend as its keys accrete, because it's losing quantum and its keys are being pulled at an even faster rate, it's already been slowed by the key pulling that has been taking place in the other of the 666 cycles. But at this point, it's easy to bend it. It's easy for it to be drawn in to the frequencies of the reverse current, because it's starting to bend because it doesn't have enough quantum to hold the higher arc. Because the particular arc that the crystal spiral makes has to do with the specific base pulse rhythm of the spiral, which has to do with how many keys and fire letters it has activated inside of its currents. So if this is why in the last few months we've been being astrally whacked. The indigos have been being, kind of not beat up, just slapped around, right? Just to weaken us just a little bit, just to annoy us, just to drain our energy. No direct attack, why bother? Because they're planning on the big one. And they just want to make sure we're all tired enough and all weak enough and aggravated enough and just sick of everything enough, where we just don't have enough energy to hold what needs to be held. And that is still not going to happen. It may have been exhausting for some of you. Some of you may have not had problems. That's good. Others, it's like was one thing after another, from like stupid mess ups that happen with offices, like electric companies or this kind of company or that company, just weird, out of left field, dumb things that just waste hours of your time or drain you or just upset you in little silly ways, that kind of stuff. So that's all been part of the Thetans. It's the Thetans' plan, but they stick the Tothians on us. They say, Tothians, now that your shield fell, we got control of you, and you'll either go do what we tell you or we'll destroy you. Pick one, right? So the Tothians kind of said, oh, okay, no problem. Yes, boss. And they have been the ones that have been taking whacks at the Indigo shield. And that's kind of good because they can whack, but they're not as bad as dealing with the Thetans directly. We'll get to that, I'm sure. But anyway, so this is what all of the activations we're doing are not only about sacred sex and being able to go home and have some skills to take to bed with you. They're also about being able to go home and really go home sometimes and find out what it's like on the other side of ascension, where you're not on a planet that's been a prison planet, and where you can actually enjoy sharing in love spaces with other people and understand what that means. Because it'd be kind of funny if we all got through a Stargate and those of the people who are single say, oh great, I'd love to, like, hi, are you married? Or that kind of thing. If we don't know about this stuff, we'd be really not prepared to deal with the cultures that this is common knowledge to. All of this information is common knowledge. So we're being given a primer, like a primary school and they wouldn't be doing that if they didn't think we were going to get there. So that's a good sign. Anyway, this is what we're trying to avoid. We will avoid it, but it's just another nuisance in this drama of the victim-victimizer game. Now I want to show you how that I'm pointing out that there are 9 stages in each of the 6 cycles. And there are 9 stages of escalation and progression. And they also have their translation in weird little programs that come out between people. These programs are coded literally into the Metatronic overlays. And now they're not just overlays. Now they've actually got the harness on the outer domain Tarns. Now, the people who have been working with our techniques since the activation of the Tarn, we avoided having our Tarn fall into that compaction. We overstepped the threshold at that point, and that's why we've been able to activate the beginnings of the core tachyon cycle, or the sets of tachyon cycles. This is a point where they could stop that progress, but they're not going to. So with this progression of the 666 and the Metatronic spiral and how it eats keys until it has enough eaten keys where it can overcome the entire crystal spiral and just take all the rest of the keys and break the spiral. These phases of the VV game are interesting because they're connected to our natural cycles. As you can see, they're connected this way where their axes interface, but there's more connections to that. Let me see the next one, please, honey. I don't know where I have that in line with. Yeah, that's the one I would like to put up. Oh. Yeah, I'll put that one up first because I want to show the numbers. Then we can put yours with a nicer typeset. Oh, okay. I don't know if I can read it this way. Yes, put that up. I don't know if it's legible. All right. This is the chart we're working on. This is the one that had me going insane with the numbers. We haven't had time to fill them all in yet, but I've got all the numbers that go across on all of these. What it tells you is in our natural cycle, right? It tells you, all right, top thing going across there, the tachyon cycle number and the axes, okay? So it's like for this one, it would be tachyon cycle 1, was, abbreviated TC1, axis 1 to axis 2, right? So it tells you about that tachyon cycle. It tells you that the tarn is number 3, is axis 1, has 3 parta chi and 1 parta key. It's considered they are times 1 keys. They have 4 fire letters per key, and the tarn keys, they're called the tarn keys, TC1. So these things refer to what it is you're looking at over here. These are the headings. All right. So key multiple. That means 576 fire letters times what? Okay. Now 576 fire letters has to do with this. If you look at 144 times 1 keys, okay, 144 keys. 12 keys are generated in 1 tachyon cycle, right? There are 12 harmonic key cycles, each with, wait, did I say that right? There are 12 keys generated in 1 harmonic key cycle. There are 12 harmonic key cycles in 1 tachyon cycle equals 144 harmonic keys. When you break keys down into fire letters, when you turn keys into fire letters, this ends up with 576 fire letters per 144 keys. All right, that gives you your base, right? So all of these are how many times that, right? So you have times 2 keys, which means 2 times that. All right, that many fire letters. You have these, oops, I forgot the number in there. That's 4. That's supposed to be 4. There are 4 times keys. Then you have 8 times keys. Then you have 16 times keys. And I still have I took it up to here because here's where we're going into. But I wanted to show you just how these bits work. It's quite confusing with what replicates where. These are all found by looking at each tachyon cycle. What happens at the flash point? Okay, when flash point occurs, what replicates, what doesn't, what comes out, and where does it go? So I had the paperwork on this was brutal. It was just all over. I had to take each one of the tachyon cycles and trace it as far as which quantum, because they all are different. They have different key content. How many of the keys, this was just telling you how many fire letter sequences. If you have fire letter content of 144 times what keys. All right, so 144 times 1 keys equal 576 fire letters. This equals total number of 144 key sets. How many sets of 144 keys? That means new and what one's replicated, right? That's in 1, it's 144 key set. How many keys are totally in that set? 144. All right, when you take this over, you get times 2 keys. They have a total of 1,152 fire letters. All right, there are 244 key sets, and there are a total of 288 keys. So I had to trace all this up. That was the easy part. The hard part was finding some of these numbers, because I had to go down here into this information where I had to look at the key cycles and number of fire letters held in Aurora fire crystal 12 sets and number of fire letters in Orta cloud. I had to analyze which were those. How many Orta clouds does each one have? Which, of course, depends on how many times it's gone in to source and come back out again after its first cycle. Because the first cycle of its own tachyon cycle, it goes into source, comes back out. The next thing births, and it rebirths out, and its crystals become fire crystals, right? Then the next time it goes in with one of the other things ahead of it, whatever its replica of its keys is, they go into Oort clouds. And it depends on how many times it went through a flash point. Will depend on how many 15-level Oort clouds it will have around it, and that will depend that you'll have to trace the fire letter content all the way through to find out how much is held in Oort or Orta and how much is held in crystal keys. So I had to trace this whole thing. This took me ages because they made me do the math. I guess just show me a picture and let me write it down, will you? But they said I wouldn't be able to hold the sequence and transmit. This is, again, the graphs, even with numbers and letters on them, are part of the codes that will activate things in the bodies. That's why I'll show you it even if it's halfway done. And at least I know the math is there, so even though you can't see it yet, it's still run through my body at least once. And that's what was wiping me out all day. It took ages to do this. But we've got it down where we've got these all analyzed. And it was like, oh, great. And then they added this bottom part, which I didn't even realize. They'd given me bits of this weeks ago, and then kind of left it there and didn't give me more. It's going to be expanded on later, where there's whole profiles that go with each of these stances, so we can begin to watch it better. But what is interesting is each one of these shows one of the tachyon cycles. This is axis 1, where the Taran is born, axis 2, where the dyad is born, axis 3, where the myad is born, I believe, axis 4, where the monad is born, Amareya is born, Adon is born. That's where we are in here, right? Now, it goes all the way up to what would be axis 9. Now, axis 9 would actually be axis, the 0-1 point of the next cycle, all right, the next yuga cycle. That would be after we hit 0 point, after we went through our Adashi, our Adashai, and our Adashi cycle, and came back up and did our flame cycle and did our rotation, our rebirth of the Unisai level. Okay, so that would pertain to the axis 9, where you have the Rosh Hashanah. There's a whole thing that happens here, is where you go into Rosh Hashanah at axis 8, you go through your Adashi cycle, and then you come back out, and you're still at axis 8, and then you make the shift in Rosh Hashanah to the axis 9 with the birth of the Unisai. All right, see that, and you would go through this series of them for each of the 4 yuga cycles. All right, and that would be a fulfillment of a complete tachyon cycle, where you would have, at that point, you should be able to walk through a gate, if the gate can hold. And we're trying to make sure the gate holds here. There's one gate left to worry about, so we don't have a lot to distract us. So it should go just fine. Yeah, and you don't. It's not meant to be. This is not meant to be a scary workshop, and the information doesn't have to be reacted to with fear. That gate will be protected with all they've got. Okay, you don't have to be afraid of getting stuck in the fall, and you're in the right place if that's what you want to do, is get out of having to worry about that probability. Okay, so I don't want you to feel frightened. And there's actually a joy in this, that if we move the part about, well, it's sad that the whole rescue mission didn't work, but the fact that we're going into the Kama Sutra activations, this is exciting. We're getting ready. We're firing the engines now. And so I hope you can feel the happy part of it, even though when you're this tired, it's probably hard to feel either part of it. It is for me anyway. I'm just like, what? Are they sleeping? Bless them. All right, can we lift this up a little bit? Please, thank you, honey. What they showed me last, I knew there must be some connection, but I had no idea where they were going with this, right? Each of those stages, the 9 stages of the natural expansion, is when the sextant clock is plugged in to us, is one stage of escalation that leads up to a final direct attack and the I destroy you stance, right? Now, there is a hidden victim-victimizer game going on here. There is an aggressor and there is a target. What's kind of funny is, or sad funny, but with the 666 program, where first it goes forward, then it goes backward, then it goes forward again, you end up with whoever was the victim in one, then it reverses and the other one is, then it comes back and does the other way again. So there's this polarity shift at the end of a cycle where who is the victim, he who was first will later be last kind of thing, and he who is victim will later be victimizer, that kind of program. And it's been running, and it affects everyone because it is coded directly into the outer domain Rosetta. It is literally coded in as a fighting code, as a program, as if somebody out there computer programmed and put microchips in a set of farm animals to make them go do weird things to each other every once in a while on a regular basis. Okay? That's what it's like. We don't have the chips exactly in our body as if somebody put us on a slab and stuck a metal piece in us. We don't need to, because we have Metatronic crystals where our own crystals have been taken, part of them, harvested through the 666 cycle, turned into hexagon-shaped crystals that are an unnatural configuration. I mean, you see hexagon-shaped crystals are always floating around in in the atmosphere, even on Earth. They cause things like the effects of moon dogs and those kind of things. They have to do with hexagonal ice crystals and those kind of things in the air. And these are not natural phenomena. They shouldn't be here. And they shouldn't be in our bodies either. So this victim-victimizer game is running through mutations in our key structure, which means it's running through mutations that are carried in our skin, our bone, and our blood. Can't get much closer to home than that, right? And of course, well, actually you can. Just one step closer. They're carried in our seed atom, which runs our ruchete of the outer domains, right down through our private parts. So, whenever a baby is conceived, under these conditions, the mutation and the victim-victimizer consciousness is imbued right into the cellular code. So this is a major program. If you look at this world and say, why for history, all of known history, why has everybody been fighting with each other? Well, there is an explanation. And it also has an explanation to do with, particularly since the fall of Metatron, where the Metatronic code was put into full operation in this matrix. It just created a game out of it for certain people. But it's not a game to the people who have to live it and suffer it and die through it over and over and over again. All right, it is a net, and it is a net we can begin the process of breaking. I just want to show you some of the postures and stances, because you may find some of them. I look forward to when we get the whole profiles out on them. That's one of the things I want to be able to finish first, so you can spot it when it's coming, right? When you start to find yourself saying certain things, going, uh-oh, wait a minute, redirect. That sounds like I'm being a victim. Because if you're playing victim, it means you got a victimizer. You've engaged the game with someone. If you feel victimized, if you feel aggressive towards someone and you're being mean or whatever, or just thinking mean, right? You are still holding an aggressor energy toward the other person. So these things and they run subconsciously. They're like your elemental force taking part of your mind and making it do other stuff, and every once in a while it comes out your mouth and gets you in trouble. And then you kind of go, what'd I do? I did not. I didn't do that. I didn't say that. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. Forget it. You get into these weird loop arguments where there just is no solution. And you can look at each other, two people engaged in it, and you think the other is absolutely nuts or completely possessed at the moment. It's something. But it's actually, you can get attachments. There's all sorts of attachments that will connect to the field through these imprints, because these are held in the teleospheres. Remember, you have a teleosphere in your crystal body on each of the dimensional levels and density levels around you. These would normally hold in little gelesic points, right? Little Ors and Ls would hold the natural program of your expansion cycles and your memory matrix. You have a relationship energetically with everything you see and everything you manifest through yourself, through your body. And that it is stored as an imprint within the crystal body, as a radiation imprint. And with the sextant clock, what it does is it puts a false memory matrix into the entire crystal body structure on the full three-dimensional level. So part of that false memory structure is the fight or flight instinct. It controls the chemicals that create the fight or flight instinct, which is completely out of proportion to what it should have been. It's like almost a detriment to survival at this point, because everybody's so over chemically reacting to fight or flight that it actually hampers other levels of understanding where neither fight or flight are a needed option. We're not like amoeba that need to worry about what's going to eat them next, technically speaking. So the fight or flight instinct, the way the brain chemicals work, as well as the hormones and other things that affect other parts of the body, are all connected into this. So on those currents, you have riding this game. And it's like somebody's malicious idea of a virtual reality persona game on the internet. Except we're the internet. Okay, the victim-victimizer game stages encrypted in the key crystal set. They are not just encrypted in the crystal body. The way they get into the crystal body as encryption is because they are encrypted into the keys. Part of the keys that we carry are carrying these encryptions. And what's interesting is these before showed you the key sets, which cycle they were generated on, how many keys, etc. Right? This shows you which program of the victimizer escalation is carried in which set of keys? Now, we've moved through these most recently, and we are coming up. Here's where we are now. Start October. That's here, right? We're going for birth of the Adon. Sorry, birth of the Adon. And that means we're starting this set. It is affecting the planet as well as the indigo shield. Now, it starts here with the Taran codes, and stuck in them as overlays, you have VV1. This is called, in this one you have the aggressor. The A stands for the aggressor, and the T stands for the target. And some of these are very, very difficult to tell who the aggressor is, or if there is one. And that's what they're meant to do. All right? The aggressor is the buddy, right? Oh, I'm your buddy, I'm your friend. Oh, yes, I just think you're real. Let's do stuff together. I'll just hang out with you. Right. There's a weird feel to that when it's running, because you really think, you kind of go, seems really nice. Why do I feel weird? Seems really nice. Why do I feel weird? Right? Because you can't really tell if they're nice or if it's you. You know, is it something wrong with me today? I don't know. Yeah. So it's a trickery one. The objective of it is the objective is victim submission through seduction. Being seduced into thinking you're actually their buddy, right? The type of target that buys into or has the receivers for this is the one who has the lone child victim program running. Lonely, alone in the world, in a big, awful, scary world, and I really don't like it here. I really wish I had a friend to be with me because I don't like being here. All right, something like that is a program that's a stuck spot. A lot of people ended up in as children because they were feeling that, right? And that stuck spot was a perfect spot for the game to engage, where people who are stuck with that and not realizing that they're actually transmitting that pattern, it may take a while to even realize it in yourself. I mean, a lot of these patterns, you don't even realize you have them, right? You might find anger layers on top of them before you get to the fact that the anger is really about you're feeling hurt. And you know, like there's layers to emotion that as we learn to work through them, we'll start to understand this stuff more. But these games will run through the subconscious, through the chemicals, where you have the buddy and lone child. The buddy is the aggressor, but doesn't appear to be, just seems so very nice, right? And do anything for you. And not always just anything, sometimes just, I'm just a good guy or a girl. You know, just me. And, oh, I really like you. You seem really mellow. Yeah, I'm really mellow. Yeah. All right. And lone children really like that. Oh, this one's safe. I feel safe here. I feel safe here. That's good. Right? So if you need to feel safe, and it's a real strong pattern that draws you into relationships, realize that has a bit of a kick from, you should be able to feel safe as you, with or without a relationship, whether you're alone in the world or not. If you're fully embracing your connection to Source and Spirit and the Christ. Eventually, we'll all get there. Right now, we still have a lot of emotional, twisted stuff from trying to live down here in a crazy world, basically, in a prison camp world where you can't tell who's your friend, who's not your friend. So we're overcoming these patterns, but that's just the beginning. That's just the first engagement of progression. We're just, I'll be your buddy, and you be the one who needs me because you're so lonesome, and I'll make you feel all better. Right? This is the false friend stance, and it's covert control via feigned allegiance. Okay? Oh, I am your ally. Don't worry about it. We'll hang out together. It's like, to the end. Yeah, right? People will run this while FAs are running them. And it is insincere, particularly if they're possessed ones. Because the possessed ones get in there and they have fun with the game. Right? They actually enjoy it. The FAs, they like to feed. And they know that's how to do it. It works. It's a pattern of engagement of energy through behavior and action and words and field stance that allows one being to suck energy off another. And it's been programmed into us, so we fall into it ourselves without meaning to. But when we fall into it, we also become when it turns on, let's say, when it cycles through and we get a burst of it coming through our pattern, and it will cycle through our life at different times. It will have peaks and lows and that kind of thing. When that comes through, we are most vulnerable to getting FAs attaching to us and trying to get into our bodies, because they will ride those currents when they burst through, like burst through as little pulses of energy through the crystal body and into the crystals that our matter body is made out of. So that was level 1. I'm just going to go through these quickly because I could talk for a long time on each one of these. What? Is it? Okay. Okay. They're saying wait till it's lighter. Yeah. Yeah, and then we'll come back. I guess we'll have to do and come back in and finish and do the other bits. Does it matter? They said, no, it doesn't matter if you pick up or drop off first, as far as what goes out there. And the water will help, as will the salt. Huh? Okay. Anyway, three-way conversation. Yeah, we don't want to totally miss dawn by spending the next 2.5 hours in technique. So we will do the dawn thing on the beach when the light comes up a bit, and then we'll come back to finish the full activations, because they said it doesn't matter which way it goes as far as outside first or not. I need the one with my scribbles on it, though. Is it? I thought you said you had to edit some of those out, like shorten them. I need them the way they were. Okay. Yeah, but I might lose it because I had it worded a certain way. Thank you. It's not as pretty, but yeah. Okay. Anyway, the VV2 stance, all right, or the engagement. The aggressor is the baby doll, and the target is the doting do-gooder. Oh, aren't I cute? Oh, I really like you. I knew one of those. I won't name names. But it's an aggressor stance, where you're actually trying to get submission through seduction from the other, and from the victim or the target, right? So the target person would have the same problem of the person who dotes on others and likes to baby people, and people who like to be babied can run this program and just wrap mommy or daddy right around their finger and drag them wherever they want to. That kind of program. I won't go into all of these in depth because it'll be way too, it'll take way too long this time, but we're going to go into these more in depth. Particularly, we're going to start at an FOL because we have to see this on a larger scale as far as the politics that are unraveling on the planet right now. All right, so in this stance 2, we have, it's called the false child stance. I didn't even categorize that yet. This is covert control via feigned aggressor deference, where it's like, I'm letting you have the power. Oh, you have, I'm just following you, and they're really not. Where they're actually, it's another submission, seduction for submission thing that's taken place, and that one leads to, and these will cycle, where you'll actually get, it's funny in relationships, if you find yourself in one and you finally end the relationship, you'll actually pick up somebody that's right on the next one. And you keep cycling through, and it's like, oh, geez, not that again. If you look back at your relationships, you can actually see weird patterns. Like, why did I always pick the same boyfriend or girlfriend? Why? I mean, isn't there any relationship that will be peaceful? Like, how many times can it always be their fault? It keeps showing up in my hologram, right? Right. So this is when you realize there's some pattern running, because you start to see that it's actually showed certain issues have come up repeatedly in different relationships, but they're the same issues, different faces, right? They have to do with these things. All right. Now, anyway, on the second one, we got the false child stance, covert control by a feigned aggressor deferring, pretending they're deferring to the person they're actually targeting. The next stage of defense, and what's really sad, is once you figure out what victim stance you've been playing, it changes the game and it ups it, and you get the next aggressor level. So it always keeps you on your toes, whether you want to be or not. Right? So, and it's like they always say, like, oh, the victim is actually the one that holds the power in a conflict. I don't believe that line. Actually, we hold part of it. The other part's being held by the aggressor. So we actually have a piece of the aggressor inside of ourselves as well. So there's, like, if you're playing the outer victim role or the outer target role, there's a part of you that's actually being an inner aggressor, and you're not expressing out here, but you're actually attached into people's fields in an aggressive way that you don't even know you're doing. And it runs with this program, and vice versa. There is an inner victim or target inside of every aggressor. So it's a real nightmare. It's a loop of energy that's meant, it's a no-win situation. It's meant to create complete reversal of the personal keys and to allow other things to take over your body and your existence. And it's been doing pretty well on this planet for the last number of centuries. We got number 3 posture is, again, it's the objective, the aggressor's objective, is seduction through submission. No, submission through seduction. Sorry about that. It's called the hero-savior, aggressor stance, role, and the target is the helpless honey. Oh, I'm a damsel in distress, right? No problem. Here comes the knights in shining armor, right? And they can be male or female. It doesn't matter. It's not always male knights, and it's not always, like females locked